And welcome to Pregnant Possibilities. I am Jean Schumacher, and my partner is Deborah Shapiro, a board-certified OBGYN. And together, we have created a program called the Pregnancy Advantage. And our objective is to help women to get their bodies pregnant ready. And also provide support if you're experiencing difficulties in conceiving, especially before you go down that in vitro rabbit hole. But we also have exciting news. We're currently working on the Baby Advantage, which will begin at conception and take you through, not the baby, you through your first year of your baby's life. And today on our show, we're going to be discussing raising plant-based children and the impact it has on the children's health. And of course, we have today a special guest who's come back with us, which is Dr. Joanna Frey from Back to the Garden PR for Puerto Rico.com. So back to the gardenpr.com. She and her husband run a supervised water fasting clinic in San Juan, certified by the International Association of Hygienic Physicians, and they teach you how to live and regain your health through a whole food plant-based lifestyle. So Dr. Joanna, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Well, we love connecting with you because what you're doing down there is amazing. Plus the fact that you're raising your kids plant-based. Before we jump into the questions from you though, we had a question from our viewer, from Amy, and she has this question. I just want to read it. I'm going through IVF, in vitro fertilization, and we'll have implantation on Thursday. Woohoo! I know we've been following your journey, Amy, and more power to you, so rock on. So she was told to restrict her workouts and activities to keep her heart rate below 140, no weightlifting, jumping, high impact, dance, nothing that strains the abdomen. And so her OBGYN said she could do light yoga, stretching, and walking for the first 9 weeks before she comes in for her first ultrasound. And so she wants to know, is her situation different because she's doing IVF? And what are, regular physical activity recommendations for pregnancy? So, Deborah, I'm going to let you jump in on that one, and then we're going to come back to you, Dr. Frey.
Excellent. Amy, I'm so excited. This is so wonderful. You're getting ready for implantation of this embryo. So, naturally, when the egg and sperm get together, usually it's right outside of the ovary, actually, very close to the fimbria, the feathery end of the fallopian tube. And the fertilized ovum rolls down the tube and then implants. It gets into the uterus and it very quickly implants and buries itself under the lining of the uterus with these very invasive cells that become the placenta, called the syncytial trophoblast. And they're pretty, it's in a stable position. But it's very different when you have IVF because they're actually going to be going in through the cervix and just placing the fertilized ovum, as far as I know, placing the fertilized ovum inside the cavity. And it may move around a little bit before it settles in and implants. And this is a critical time. And actually, your doctor after implantation may tell you not to have sex and not to have an orgasm. You don't want the uterus to contract. There's a risk with IVF of the ovum actually traveling retrograde up the fallopian tube a little bit, and there's an increased risk of a tubal pregnancy when you have IVF because of that, because that ovum is just a little bit unstable initially. So they don't want, the other issue is just about keeping the uterus having all of its blood supply and not increasing any stress on the body that might shunt blood to other parts. So for example, if you're exercising tremendously with your heart rate up, you're going to be taking blood away from the uterus and getting it to your muscles, your striated muscles in your legs and whatever other, in your heart. So you just don't want to add any extra stress on your body, and physically you don't want to be sort of doing anything that might interfere with this implantation stage. And until that placenta is established, they just really want you to be as careful as possible. Now, later in pregnancy, you will certainly be able to resume all the activities that you were doing before, unless you were doing things that were particularly dangerous, like that could involve the possibility of falling or blunt trauma to the uterus, or to the abdomen. That would not be very safe. So we don't recommend rock climbing when you're pregnant and things like that. So, and of course, after 22, 24 weeks, when the uterus is large enough that it might be able to compress the inferior vena cava, this big vein that takes blood back from the lower extremities back to your heart and lungs and heart and out to the uterus, you don't want to be lying flat on your back. So that's those are the main changes that will occur later in pregnancy. But for now, you just really don't want to add any extra stress to your body. You just want all the blood to be going to the uterus and keep the uterus sort of quiet so that the fertilized ovum can implant where it's supposed to implant. Thank you for joining us again. It's so lovely to see you. So last time we talked about your pregnancy experience and your birth experience, and I wanted to just continue that conversation a little bit. And I was just wondering if you had any issues around food or gaining weight or nausea or even cravings during your pregnancies.
Well, on my first pregnancy, like we had talked before in the other interview, I had just recently started this lifestyle. I had only been doing it for 2 to 3 years. And then I got pregnant with my firstborn, Asher. He's 9 years old right now. I had a pretty pleasant pregnancy. I did have a little bit of morning sickness, but it was never very uncomfortable. And I didn't really have nausea. I did get a little swollen in my extremities. And I remember having to take my marriage ring off. But other than that, it was pretty good. I felt good. I did exercise. I kept going on with my diet. I did have more severe cravings. I mean, we always have cravings, pregnant or not. That always occurs. But I did have more cravings linked to my prior lifestyle. And even though it had been a couple of years, I still have memories of those foods. And I'm sure I still have residue of toxins in my system. So I did make some exceptions, and I did have some vegan junk foods during that first pregnancy. But now in this one that I've been doing it for so long, and I've been so consistent, and I've done few water fasts, supervised water fasts as well. It was incredible. I never had nausea. I never had morning sickness, and I did have cravings, but they were always aligned to my lifestyle. So I did increase more in complex carbohydrates. I might have increased a little bit more on the fats because I eat pretty low in fat. But other than that, it was never anything out of the range. So I can only adjudicate that this lifestyle just made my pregnancy. I didn't get swollen at all in any of my extremities. I kept my marriage ring. My weight was wonderful. I only get around 20 to 25 pounds. I lost them already right now, this week, finally. I'm 4 months postpartum. And I feel wonderful. So I can say that being consistent in this lifestyle for many years is a proof that your body, your health just keeps evolutionizing, keep progressing forward. And this pregnancy, it was just wonderful. That's why I love to share this with other people.
That's fantastic news. That's interesting. So, but you said that you had been doing this for a couple of years before you first got pregnant, but still there were little tweaks, little changes that you noticed from the way you were the first time and the way you were starting the second. You mentioned that you did some water fasts. Tell me about those? How long? What kinds of water? Like just a couple of days, or something longer, like you would be offering people at your clinic?
No, just as long. I actually never did them on my own because water fasting should be supervised and should be in an environment of complete rest. And I really cannot have that in my home. I have the supervision, I have the knowledge to supervise myself, but I mean, it's impossible to be resting in your house. So I always traveled. I've done them in True North. I've done them with Dr. Gracie Ewan in Ohio. I've done from 7 to 14 days water fast and then refeeding. And the last one was supposed to be 18 days, but 14 days, I was like, this is it. I'm done. And that's really helped a lot to clean up my diet and the way I live just in general. That's why before, even though I've been practicing for 2 to 3 years, this lifestyle, when I had Asher, I still felt hooked mentally on certain foods. When I went to the supermarket, I would look at them and be like, oh, I remember when I used to eat that. And that was still activated inside me. And even though I was not eating them, that was very present. So as you tune in with the years and the years and then in my experience, water fasting just helped me not perfect, but become as best as I can and consistently. That's why I think I got these results in this last pregnancy.
That's so interesting. I don't know if it's something physiologic or if it's something more well, I don't know if there's even that much of that much of a distinction between the mind and the body, but yeah, something that made you feel no longer really attached psychically to the foods that aren't doing your body any good.
What happens is that when we have those past eating habits, there's most of them are these experiences that we have with our family, with our friends, with ourselves, and there's a lot of emotion involved, and then we create this memory of those moments with those foods. And just 2 to 3 years in this lifestyle wasn't enough for me to like erase those memories. I needed to build new ones. So as I kept practicing until now, I've made a point of always creating new experiences with this way of eating. So instead of going out to celebrate something, we make something at home and we make it very special. And then we create that emotion of happiness and the connection with food, but it's healthy. And I've been erasing those other memories in a way and creating these new ones. So, and then with the water fasting, that physiological effect of burning all that fat and all that residue of toxins that you just accumulate in your adipose tissue is obviously, definitely is going to help. And cleaning my taste buds. Yeah.
And now I was just thinking that you're building these new memories of food with your children, and they're just growing up, never having to think about, like my mother's brisket or things like that,
Exactly.
So, just wanted to check with you. There are a lot of people who, and I've certainly experienced this with people that I've spoken to, that they say that, oh yeah, I tried to go vegan, but it just didn't work. I needed meat, or I need meat. I mean, I think this is so common that people say, they give it a try. They go dip into the water a little bit, and then they just come back and they just say, oh my God, I feel so weak. And I've talked to Dr. Clapper about this, and his theory is that there are these, I guess they're chemicals, they're the building blocks of different proteins possibly, or of muscle, but creatine and carnitine, these molecules that we can make. But when you start your life being fed animal protein from 6 months, with the liquid chicken, whatever, those genes that can make those molecules and those proteins are suppressed, and they're there, but they're not being activated. And so when you go vegan, you may feel like, I need protein, because you actually do need a little, because your body isn't sort of revved up yet. But if you give it a little time, and also maybe just have a little bit, he talks about using animal protein sort of medicinally, just so you can keep and then your own body will take over. But if you raise children without that exogenous carnitine and creatine, that those genes will always be active in them. And, your children are not going to come at 6 years old and say, I feel weak, I need meat. They're just never going to do that. So I wondered if you agreed with that.
We live in a society that we want changes and we want them fast. And when we change our diet, especially with something that for some people is the complete opposite, which is a whole foods plant-based diet or healthy vegan diet, which you start incorporating so many fruits and vegetables and grains, something that's practically new for this population when they do that transition, you're going to experience some this detoxification symptoms. And it takes a while for your body to regulate. It doesn't really happen from one day to the other. And I've seen this in our clinic here, in our residential center. And people, it's hard for them to understand that it takes a while for your body to get rid of those toxins and to build up new tissue and a new gut bacteria that's healthy. And you will experience those symptoms, and you just need to let your body go through that. And it's a completely normal process, and it's a very important process. And we just need to slow down and accept that, and just keep eating a healthful diet. Always practice with good sleeping and not doing recreational drugs. Some of these people that do that transition, they're still drinking alcohol, they're still smoking cigarettes or using marijuana, they're not exercising, so they're not really using all of the possible channels for them to have a better result or a quicker result. So I think what I've seen in our practice is that's a major issue. People want results instantly, and so you need to relax, you need to understand what's happening, and you need to know that that is normal for you to have symptoms and maybe not feel your best for a couple of weeks or even a couple of months.
I've heard of that. I haven't, I personally didn't experience that, but
me neither.
But I agree that I've certainly heard that is a problem for a lot of people who are making this transition, especially possibly if you started out being very overweight and you had a lot of extra fat on you, because those fat cells are this place where we sort of hide toxins. And then if you're they're going to be released, and that might be something as well. So I have another question. I was wondering if there were any adjustments to your diet, to your normal diet, that you made during your pregnancy or while you were breastfeeding, or were there any, did you have to fine tune it, or did you have to be more, were you more concerned of like, I have to get more iodine or this or that?
Not really. I always find that an interesting question from other people that are not in the lifestyle, that they're always like, so what are you going to do? Are you going to eat more lentils? You're going to eat more beans, more plant protein? Honestly, no, because I'm getting everything my body needs. What I did notice is that I increased the caloric density of foods. So I was eating more complex carbohydrates, more beans, more starches, more rice, things that I normally don't eat as much. I do eat them, but I like to eat more fruits and vegetables during the day. And then at night, I do usually have like a cooked meal. So while I was pregnant, and not the whole pregnancy, just more towards the second and third trimester, I was craving more at lunchtime, like a warm meal, and as well as dinner. And so those really were the changes. And I may have increased a little bit of fat, but it was more as a pleasure. It wasn't because my labs were fantastic. So it wasn't nothing to do with that physiological aspect. So it makes it easy, because it is an easy lifestyle in terms of what it is about. What's hard is the practice of it. So I always tell my patients, and actually I had a patient ask me the other day, I was nursing and I needed to eat animal products because I was vegan/vegetarian. And and once I started eating animal products, I started producing more milk. And it just doesn't make a lot of sense, because first of all, this person is vegan/vegetarian. So what does that even mean? Or you're vegan or you're vegetarian. You have to be one of both. So if you're vegetarian, you're still eating animal products. You're still getting the animal protein and the cholesterol and the saturated fats and other molecules and other toxins that are included in those meals. The problem is that we're just not eating a diverse diet. And who knows what really happened when she incorporated meats. But we know that in Africa, females that are practically not eating, they're in complete famine, still produce breast milk for the needs of their baby. So
did you have any postpartum moodiness or depression or baby blues, and was that different between your first and your second also? And also, did you have additional family support with either or both of your pregnancies? And how quickly did you feel like your body recovered?
Well, my first pregnancy, I was in Georgia. We were both at school, so I didn't have a lot of family support around. But even so, I had a pretty great recovery. I mean, I took me a month or two to seal any sutures that were made down there. But I felt fantastic. I still kept practicing my diet. I couldn't really exercise until like the third or fourth month, which is completely normal. The fact that I didn't have family support did play a small role in maybe feeling like it was more challenging, because I didn't have the help to take breaks because my husband was in school and I was practically the whole day by myself with the baby, and I was nursing on demand. But now compared to this one, which I am not in school anymore and I do work, but I make my own choices if I want to work or not. And I do have family here. My recovery has been wonderful. Actually, of course, better than the one before. I just started having a solid routine of working out. It's taken me like 4 months to get back into a solid where I feel the need and the energy to really work out. And my dietary habits have been consistent. And I don't know what else to say, because it's just, things just flow very naturally when you just practice this way.
Fantastic. We're so happy for you too.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk about your older son. I know he's been raised plant-based, and has it been tough for him, like at parties, like if there's going to be cake or ice cream or candy? I mean, and does he eat that stuff, and does he come home and does it affect him?
He started from day zero in this lifestyle. So when he had the capacity to understand certain concepts, or just being a conversation for a longer period of time, like around 2 to 3 years old, we started educating my son. That has played always a fundamental base in the raising of my children. So we started talking to him about our lifestyle and the way we ate, because around 2.5, 3, I started putting him on a little preschool program, a Waldorf system right next to where we were. And they were presented with different kinds of foods. So I knew I had to intervene right there. So we started connecting with him and educating him. And at that age, it's really hard to talk about health in general. So we went to where we know we can really connect with him, which is the inherent compassion and being that kids are. And we started talking to him about the animal welfare and our planet. And there's so many books on this topic just for kids his age. So we introduced all of that education with him. And we told him that he was going to go to a school program, or even when it was just parties, he was prepared to what was coming. And I always, at the beginning, I was like a little apprehensive and just nervous with the whole situation because I didn't know how he was going to react. And I always prepared things for him, like things I knew he liked, some carrot cake, if we were going to a birthday gathering, or snacks. I was always very well prepared. So he never had any issues. It's so funny. We freak out more as parents than he does. When he would go to parties, it wasn't important for him, the food that was there presented. And if he was just attracted to something, then I would go over there and just tell him, listen, we're not going to eat this. We're going to eat this. I brought this other food. That rarely happened. And it's really all about how we educate our kids and the consistency in our home, right? Because it's not the same thing to say, I want my kid to be healthy, and then at home you're still eating meat and you're still eating processed foods, of course, and you're still going out to those places. So it was very easy. And actually, parents wanted me to bring stuff to the birthday party because they wanted to have things that were actually healthy but looked good and tasted good. So you start opening a community without even thinking about it. So he's never had issues. He's been in 3 schools already because we've moved several times in the island. And every time he goes to a school, he brings his own lunch. He never tells me that he has any issues with bullying or criticizing. Yes, the kids ask him, what are you eating? Oh, I don't like that. Or, the comments kids make, but he never feels out of place. It's never even been presented to me. And I've prepared him for those moments already as well. If it does happen, how is he going to manage that? So he's well equipped.
Well, does he, has he ever inadvertently ever consumed something like a cake or ice cream? He's never inadvertent, really?
He's never, no, because first of all, he's only 9. So I always go to all the activities with him. So no, because he's never really tried any of those foods. The worst he's tried is vegan cheese and regular bread, just bread from the bakery that's whole wheat. It's vegan, but it has oil and has salt in it. And that's when he goes to grandma's house, or maybe grandma will put salt in the food. Remember, we don't use any salt at home. We don't use any oils, or we don't do any refined sugars or flours. So when he goes to grandma's house, he will make those decisions, and I let him because it's totally fine. It's not that big of a deal. But for example, the other day he was invited to go to the movies with friends, and he went with his own popcorn that I prepared. I bought him one of these sodas that are sweetened with stevia. It doesn't have to be sweetened with stevia, but it's one of the, something similar to what they're eating, and he still has the same fun, and he looks forward to it. And I always ask him, do you crave something from the outside world? But he's so in tune to the impact he's making with the animal welfare, with the planet. And, we live in a clinic, so he sees that all the time, the health factor. But I always use that compassionate aspect that children just have innately and just purely. Mm-hmm. Look what's happening in the animal slavery right now that's occurring. And he sees pictures and he sees some videos that are apt for his age. And which kid would deny that, honestly? So
it's true.
That's really what it is.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, I know as a mom, and you're growing, you have kids that, you're always comparing your kid to, the other kids, you can't help it. It's you always want your kid to be doing better. And how is your son compared to other kids? I mean, in terms of health overall, general, what do you see?
He's got two really good friends in school that actually follow the similar lifestyle. So they're part of our community. But and those are the kids he really mostly hangs out with. But when seeing the other kids at class, what I've noticed is there's an increase in obesity and overweight that all of us never seen before happened. I mean, at least when I was a child, I mean, there was only one kid in the class that probably was overweight or obese. Now, 3/4 of the class might be overweight. Most of these kids are very, very sedentary. I've had them come over for a play date and they just want to play video games. They just want to watch TV. And I live in a farm. So I'm like, and my kid does not really watch that much TV or video games. He has designated times in the weekends because I know how addicted at least video games are. And they just want to play. They don't want to do any exercise. They might not be as coordinated because they don't move so much, not because they don't have the capacity. It's because they don't walk, they don't run, they don't bike, they don't climb trees like we used to when we were little. So I noticed a lot of moms coming over to me telling me I'm having a hyperactivity issue or just an attention deficit disorder, and my kid doesn't want to eat vegetables. They come to me and they tell me, they just don't want it. So that's really what I've noticed. It's very sad and unfortunate. But we all know that it's not the kid's fault, right? We know that the parents play the biggest role here. So
no ifs, ands, or buts. I mean, the parents do play that role. And I saw it in the classroom without compare. I mean, seriously. And, 35 years in the classroom. And I just think back to myself, I was born in 1960. I didn't see an autistic child until the 1990s. And you see this, I mean, happening again and again and again. And now, according to the CDC, 1 out of 54, 1 out of 54 are autistic. What?
yeah.
And why? What is, and I keep looking for that one thing, which is almost very reductionist in that line, of thought process of why we're seeing that happening. But, oh my gosh, I mean, it's incredible. So, Doctora, as always, we're so thankful for you to take your time out of your very busy day. I know, from your kids, your family, your practice. We so appreciate it, and we're thankful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
It's wonderful to talk to you. It's great to talk to someone who's gone through vegan pregnancies and raising vegan kids. I mean, it's not that, especially in America or in Puerto Rico. I mean, it's just, you don't see it everywhere, but it's catching on more and more. And I'm just thankful to you for doing this and for what you do at your work.
Right.
Thank you so much.